Welcome to episode 8 of the Courageous Coach podcast, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to be courageous with your clients, your business and your life. I'm your host, Melissa Hay. In this episode, I'm in conversation with Donna Ward-Higgs. Donna and I explore the themes of learning, personal development, and the courage it takes to build meaningful connections in the coaching profession. We chat about the importance of emotional intelligence, the role of personal growth in professional success, and how our shared experience have shaped our coaching journeys. We even get to chat about the intricate balance between coaching and supervision, the evolving landscape of coaching in the context of AI, and the significance of humanity in the profession. This episode is jam-packed. So, are you ready? Let's dive in.
Hi, welcome to the Courageous Coach podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today I am going to be speaking to the wonderful Donna Ward-Higgs. It's so lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I was sharing with Donna before we were hit record. I'm ever so slightly nervous about maintaining time management for this call. So I'm going to do my very best, but I know that this is going to be a very flowing conversation. So I'm really excited to see where we get to. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure, in fact. So let's start, as I always do, by asking you to tell us something about yourself.
I'm Donna, Brummie born and bred, in case anybody hadn't worked that out in the first 3 words. And I'm the founder of Learning Partner Solutions, where we develop emotionally intelligent leaders, teams and workplaces. I'm really passionate. I believe we've all got a superpower as humans, and that superpower is the ability to learn. Learning is like the magic source of life, right? It's how we grow, it's how we develop, it's how we achieve, it's where our curiosity resides. So I do a range of training, coaching and facilitation that's all about creating learning experience that make a tangible difference. Enough of that. Anyway, I'm just super excited to be here and chatting with you because I love our conversations, which is exactly why managing time is going to be an issue. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like it's really important in this conversation to share, I think that, how our relationships developed really, because Donna and I both come, don't we, from a learning and development background.
We do.
With, just as you so beautifully described, their real passion for helping people to learn and really tap into that superpower, as you described it. And we came together as associates for working for a company developing coaches, right? And as coaches ourselves. And that relationship has grown and developed over many, many shared passions and shared interests. And like you say, the conversations we have are always enlightening, funny, inspiring. And I've said this to Donna before, that the one thing I love about connecting with Donna is that she makes me feel less alone. And I think that's so important, right? That we find people who make us feel that, with whom we can be ourselves. So it's a very important relationship for me. And I'm
me too.
Therefore so excited to have you on the first season of the podcast. So yeah, delighted for you.
Yeah. How many years have we known each other now?
Well, it's a very good question. And it's got to be at least 5.
Yeah, I did my level 7 back in 2017, I think, 18 maybe, and became an associate just after that. So I think that's probably
so maybe
where we first connected.
Oh yeah, at least 5, maybe even sort of 6, 7 years, which is amazing, isn't it? How the time goes. And the other thing I think is really interesting is that we've been developing our businesses on the same sort of journey, really, same sort of timeframes. So that's been really interesting as well, because we do different things, but a lot of similarities. And I think that that golden thread, if you like. And also what I think happens, or is true for a lot of coaches, is that we love developing people. We love seeing people grow. We love those light bulb moments. But I think also, just to pick up on something you said in your introduction, for us also, there's that piece around, I want what I do to make a difference. I want there to be some tangible outcomes, right? I don't want people to just come on a workshop and then go away and nothing changes. So really wanting to create behavior change, right? Through learning, whatever that learning looks like, coaching, workshops, facilitation, team, one-to-one.
Yeah, and I'd add in a third point, a connection to that as well, in that we both understand that in wanting to help others to develop and to have those light bulb moments, there's some really important work we have to do ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I guess that links really, really well into being here talking about being courageous.
Yeah.
That the personal development is as important as the professional development. And I think some of our best conversations have been around sharing learning, sharing mistakes, talking about the tough stuff, helping each other through those moments. Like we're messy as humans, right? Which is why I talk about emotional intelligence, because we have to embrace that messiness.
Yeah.
You can't remove the emotion from existing. And so having somebody in your corner, somebody in your tribe that helps you in those moments that feel the hardest is so important.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And yeah, I think that whole thing around being messy and imperfect, right? And that being okay, you know, and
it's not just okay, like it just is.
Yeah. So true, so true. And so, you know, of course, we've worked together on, you know, being more courageous, yes, as a coach, but in our work generally and in our lives with our business. So courage, I think for both of us in our relationship, kind of, it's threaded through everything, isn't it? It comes into everything that we try to do together. And I think that self-development piece, as you say, it's hard and it's messy. And it's uncomfortable, and all of that. So having someone to share that with is so important. But ultimately, we're doing it in order to be the best at what we do, right? And that whole thing around you can't, you can only go as far with your clients as you've been yourself. So doing your own self work is really important. Yeah.
I had as you were. Sorry, no, as you were talking, I had a thought. So linking our relationship with courage, like I remember the first time I reached out to you on email. That's one of those big courage moments, isn't it? When you make that first tentative, hi, I think I quite like you as a human. Shall we get together and just chat? And then you wait and go, oh, I really hope that they think that too. And there's some time in the day. And
yeah, absolutely. Because you put yourself out there, I think, you know, and you could, I guess looking back now, I'm thinking of, I think, how did it get good so quickly, I guess, is what I'm thinking about. And one of the things that I think happens when you reach out, and I don't know if this is just with like fellow coaches or whether this is generally in relationships. But I always think that we have this, all of those questions you mentioned, right? Will they like me? You know, do they think we've got a connection, or am I like, have I missed the mark? But also you get a little bit of comparison as well, right? Well, you know, how long have they been qualified? How successful is their business? What if they're better at X, Y, or Z than me? Or all of that.
But you know, that was a huge part of why I reached out to you, right? I knew you'd qualified before me. I knew you were more experienced. I knew you'd done your supervisor training. Like there was absolutely a desire to leech some of that from you. And just through connection, through osmosis, like just being in your presence, I knew would support my growth.
And okay, so that's super curious to me. So how did you know that? Do you think?
It's a really good question. So I think let me take it from head, heart, gut, right? Because I think it got broken down in all three ways. So from a cognitive place, like I knew you were experienced, well established. I knew that you'd been doing what I was about to be doing for some time. I knew your coaching journey had been longer than mine. So cognitively, I'm like, this person has a wealth of knowledge and experience that if we're just conversing, sharing, I'm going to get all of that good stuff coming through. If I'm experiencing things for the first time, I have somebody here who's probably been through it, who can help me kind of come off the mountain of catastrophizing and just put my feet back on the ground. From my heart, there was no, let me go to gut next. There was just a sense, there was just a real sense that a connection would be good, right? Even if it was just one conversation, there'd be huge amounts of gold in that, and the potential that one conversation might lead to another conversation and another, and eventually this friendship, this sounding board, like all of the lovely stuff that I'd categorize in us, like the gut has a hope for that. Right, another soul on a similar journey. I took the leap into full self-employment while you were still kind of straddling both, and I guess there was something in my gut that felt from the head going, what can I take from this? The gut kind of knowing actually there was a really nice balance there in that some stuff you'd done before me, but some stuff I'd done a little bit before you, and so reciprocity, right? Not just one-sided, and I think that's so important. My heart, I don't know, there's just something in souls we meet sometimes, isn't there, that just feels warm, like there's just almost like you're sensing that light shining from somewhere else, and want the opportunity just to connect and bask, but also grow that illumination. Like when those two distant lights get to come together, how much brighter does that potential light around what we do shine? Because I think our ethos, our philosophy around coaching, around learning and development is really, really similar. I guess I didn't know that at the start, but I definitely had a body wisdom sense of that.
Yeah, and that's the gut and the heart piece, right? That, like you say, there's sometimes you just know and you feel it, it's in your gut or it's somewhere in your body and you just feel it. And it doesn't really matter at that point what your head is saying, because we learn, or we try to trust that gut. But that in itself is courageous, to listen to what your heart and your gut are telling you. Because sometimes your head is telling you something else. Yeah, but what if? What if they don't want to connect? Or what if this? Or what if that? And all the reasons maybe why you shouldn't. So there's real courage in do you know what? Just send the email. Let's just go for it. See what happens, right?
And as you say that, you really make me think about the starting the journey to be a coach. Like in that initial space, it's all head, isn't it? Like we worry, have we got the tools? Have we got the models? Have we got the theory? What's the process that we're following? And it's only as we mature in our practice that we learn to drop down and tap into that body wisdom. And it still takes some time to learn to trust that body wisdom too.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think there's so many things or people or kind of learnings that we've had that we cling to as how we should be doing things, right? The people that we want to impress, or the people that we think have power over us, we give them power. And they're all the people who tell us, that's how coaching should look, and this is the process you should use, and this is the structure, and you mustn't do this and you mustn't do that. And, a lot of that is is important, right? There are, of course, things that we should be aiming for and things we shouldn't be doing. I totally get that. But I think also you learn, and it's not easy to do, to turn the volume down on that a little bit, because actually what's so important about coaching particularly is that human connection. And that is all about gut and heart, right? That there's often not a logical explanation, or even you can't quite rationalize it, but my heart or my gut is telling me to do this. It's saying it's the right thing. Can I trust it? Should I trust it? Will I trust it? Or in my head saying, the voice that's saying, no, that you shouldn't do it like that, is that louder? It's a real kind of, for me, it's volume up, volume down. What do I want to listen to here, right?
It makes me think about when we learn to swim, like that tentatively holding on to the edges. There's a point at which, to experience the full joy of being in the water, you have to let go of the sides. Yeah. And I think when we go through our initial coach training, like there are training wheels, right? All those models, all those tools, all of those structures. There are training wheels. There are safety. That structure is about safety. For us and for our clients, as we're learning that process, as we're honing those skills, they're the foundational building blocks.
Yeah.
But I think most coaches go through that. I'm picturing like a butterfly, caterpillar to butterfly. Like we have that cocooning phase of learning to come back with all of that knowledge that we've got, learning to trust that we've embodied that and are able to use it in conjunction with all of the other wisdom we have.
Yeah. So coming back to ourselves, really, right? We've got all that kind of logical, rational, cerebral, cognitive stuff, all that. Yeah. But what about me? Who am I in this? Where am I in this? What am I? What's my sense of what's happening for me, for my client? What's my sense of that in here? Yeah.
And that's so important, right? Because we talk about the coaching space being for the client to do their thinking, for the client to make their decisions, but we co-create the space in which that happens. You cannot take your presence or your wisdom out of that. You like, it's there and it's putting something into the mix. So I guess like full circle, as we often do in our conversations in these little spirals, that's where the personal development is so important. Because if you can't pause and notice what's going on for me, what am I bringing to the party, what's showing up, how's that colour in my lens, you're going to end up doing the person a disservice. And it isn't just about put that away, leave that till afterwards. It's live, it's in the moment. We've got an hour with this person to make that time really count for them. They've chosen us to hold that space with them. So it seems ridiculous to think there's not a part we play in that.
100%. I've always been really frustrated by that sort of pervasive belief that we can be two humans in connection, and I can, in real deep connection, right? But I can maintain a distance. I can keep myself out of this relationship in a safe manner in order to not bring too much of me. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's just a lie. It's just a lie, right? You are two human beings in connection. And therefore, of course, what you do, how you show up, what you're feeling, all of that is going to impact on what's happening between the two of you. So to pretend otherwise is lying, right?
Yeah, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, totally. And so then, as you said, the personal development, for me, that's when the really hard work started of coaching. I mean, I thought it was hard to begin with. And then I was like, whoa, okay, there's a whole other level of hard here, because how I show up in the space makes a difference. It has an impact. And more importantly, I have a choice about how I show up in that moment and what I'm transmitting, right, to my client. So if I'm not aware of what I'm transmitting, and I mean that in terms of my words, my body, my, everything, if I'm not aware of what I'm transmitting, then I am as you say, that could be doing some damage, some disservice even here, right?
Absolutely.
I am not working in a way that is going to best serve my clients. So there it was like, okay, right. So now there's this whole other layer of work that I need to do, which is really about understanding myself, and being curious enough to do that exploration, right?
So I don't know if you found this, because although our journeys have been different, we've had some similarities in the sense that we've done. So I did my level 5 and then my level 7. I know you did your initial. I don't know which level you did, but you then went and did your masters as well. We've both done our supervisor training. Like, did you find each time, having done the initial qualification, when you come to the material of the next qualification, there's not necessarily anything new, but that really speeds up that process of, well, actually, what's different then? What's different is me. What's different is my experience. What's different is the journey that I've taken to get to this point, and how that colours the lens that I now see these theories, these models, these frameworks, these structures through.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And actually, I vividly remember that, like most coaches, right, when we started with those ILM qualifications, you learn different models, but everyone starts with GROW, right? That's
of course, standard
it,
operating procedure.
Yeah, it's like this is the foundational model, right? So we learned GROW when I was doing my ILM, right? Brilliant, yeah, okay, that's my model, lovely. That's the process, fabulous. Oh, there are these other ones. Oh, okay, yeah, they're good too, but I want to get good at using GROW first, and that felt right. And then, a few years later, as you said, I went on to do my master's, which of course started with a diploma, right? Professional diploma. And I remember, I think maybe it wasn't the first day, but a few days in, and I sort of started to talk about process and structure and models, and out came GROW. And I remember the guy, I sat next to a lovely guy. We went through the whole MSc together, and he looked at me and he sort of, he didn't say anything, but he kind of rolled his eyes. That sort of where someone's a bit like, oh, for goodness sake, here it is again. And what really struck me in that moment was, yeah, you're right. Here we are again, but I'm not the same person now as I was. I think it was about maybe 5 years or something like that between them. I'm not the same person now. And also I'm not the same coach now. And I don't think he realized what he was doing, because he did me this huge favor, because I had this sort of immediate reaction of, I don't want to roll my eyes at this. So what do I need to do to really engage with this learning? Because it means something different now, right?
Mm.
In fact, I think I was probably more critical of GROW.
Yes.
But in order to support my learning, rather than just, well, this is rubbish, I'm going to chuck it out now, I'm too grown up for this now.
Because it's not right. It's played a part in your journey. It serves a purpose, which is why we still talk to new coaches in training about the GROW model, because there's gold dust in there. So when you went on to do your and I don't know where supervisor training came in your journey, but I almost felt like I was peeling back some really big layers on my coaching onion when I went through my supervisor training.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because again, it's a different view. It's a different lens. And and I think I was going to say yes, it is. The purpose is different, right? When you think of coaching versus supervision, of course. But I think what showed up for me in training as a supervisor, which I did earlier than I think, if I could go back, I think I'd have done it later. But I needed to be an internal supervisor. I was an internal coach at the time, so it was important to do it. But no, anyway, we are where we are. But one of the things that I noticed the most about the supervisor training was that I think maybe that was where it really started, the seed, because it came before the masters for me. So it was really where the seed was sown, that actually who I am and how I show up has the most impact. Because
Yeah.
when you're supervising, you're working with a fellow coach. They know how to coach. They know what they've all, often accomplished, experienced, even certainly qualified coaches. So it was that was a kind of like, okay, so this is more about me then, and what sort of impact, how do I support, what does that look like? Oh, and I also remember thinking, oh, okay, now at that point, I was still really grappling with the mustn't give advice, do not give advice, do not give advice. And of course, there's an interesting balance with supervision, right? Okay, maybe not still give advice, but it's also not coaching, because otherwise I'm just coaching another coach. So what is that difference about, right?
Yeah. That was actually my personal inquiry topic.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can just picture, listening to you and knowing my own experience, I can picture how that will have coloured the lens going into the masters, having had both sides of the story, if you like, both sides of the coin, and then going deeper again with all of that knowledge, all of that experience, all of that wisdom.
Yeah, totally. And I also think, I was just sat here thinking that I'm also kind of conscious of both of our development journeys, because one of the things that I think, as we've really already, I think everyone in the audience will be very clear on the fact that we think personal development, self-development, knowing yourself as a person, as a human being, and as a coach is critical in this work.
Yes, non-negotiable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're on totally the same page with that. But I think that there's been a really interesting move in kind of the last few years with the coaching profession, because you and I probably came to that, I don't know, 5 or more years ago. Probably we were kind of already at that point when we met, right? And we've continued to develop that and deepen it. And I think all of a sudden what I'm noticing, and maybe it might be that I'm just more aware, and therefore it's like, I'm going to buy a red car. Oh, now every car is red that I see. Maybe it's that. I don't know.
Good old reticular activating system at play.
Exactly. But I noticed that there is a lot more now around personal development of self for coaches, new programs, new courses, all of that stuff. People are talking about it a lot more, and I'm hearing a lot more about it. Now, as I say, I imagine quite a lot of that is because I'm drawn to it. I'm interested. I'm looking out for it.
Yeah, but I think it also resonates with the cultural narrative right now, doesn't it? Like, we're moving towards more humanistic workplaces. We have much more awareness and consideration of the human doing the job, whatever the job is.
Yeah.
And so I think it actually follows that tide as much as anything.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's increased also because of AI.
Yes.
And, and regardless, we could, again, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
No.
Other...
Tech's not my bag. Please don't take me down that road.
But I do think it's got people questioning, okay, so if we're going to have AI coaches or coach bots or whatever the latest language is, what does that mean for me as a human coach? How do I differentiate myself, right, in the future of my profession?
And surely that will always be the human in the room.
Absolutely. So your humanity, right? So, okay, so what does humanity mean? So we're starting to ask those questions. And that really excites me as a coach for the profession going forward, because I'm already strongly a believer in, actually, that's the most important part of being a coach, is your humanity. And, and being able to bring your messy, imperfect humanness into that relationship. So I'm like, this is exciting now. I say AI maybe not quite my thing or yours, but I'm kind of, if this brings more humanity to our profession again, I'm in.
Yeah, you know what? The tools have their place. They're fascinating. I had a great conversation with Ed Schrager, he's built this little bot that you can use different models and theories to put questions through, and it will get really, really fascinating. There's a lot to be said for it. I go back to the language of my early coaching training when we talk about the difference between transactional and transformational. And it reminds me of workplaces, right? went to say something and paused myself and was holding this thought as you were sharing there. Like workplaces of the 50s, that industrial era that we're moving away from in so much now, it was very transactional. Right, your contract is you give us these hours, we give you this money. Now the talk around workplaces is how do we get the best out of the human? How do we create and cultivate the conditions in which this person can show up and give us their best? And it just like the parallels between that transactional, transformational just feel really alive and apparent at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super exciting, isn't it? I mean, yeah, exciting, maybe a little bit daunting sometimes, but for me and the kind of way my own coaching practice is going and also the way I'm building the business, it's a really exciting time, right? Really exciting. So, okay, I'm now really, I've kind of got a question that I want to bring us back a little bit to courage, although as everyone who's listening, I'm hoping you're seeing that this is just part of who Donna and I are. So all of our conversations are based around that idea of being courageous. But, and so something I'm really struck by is that, I have lots of coaches who come through my, courage building programs. And for them, there is often, and I know there was for me, that there's often kind of a before and after, right? This is what I was like as a coach before. And then kind of I've learned these new skills and mindset around courage and vulnerability, trust, values, all of the stuff that we work on. And now there's kind of an after. And this is what it's like after. But what I'm really reminded of by our conversation today is that I think of all the coaches that that I have a close relationship with, in my view, you were already courageous when we met, right? It's just you. I don't know how to describe it any other way. It's just you. And so, great role model for me. But now I'm thinking about, okay, so you went through the courage building. We are on our courage building journey together. So was there a before and an after? What's changed for you?
Oh, that's a good question. Before and after. So I see it more as a continuous spiral. And I say that because so doing your Dare to Lead for Coaches program back in the old world, old language, that actually was quite a catalyst for me really thinking about how I operate in the world and how I want to operate in the world. So timing wise, I'd made that transition from being employed to setting up my own business. I was maybe year 2 of that journey. So the dust had kind of just settled because it takes time, right? The dust had settled. Life was different. But I hadn't been particularly intentional about the differences. So there were still a lot of practices in my day-to-day that were just a hangover from how I'd operated in the employed world, like the time you start work, the time you finish work, like how your days are structured, how you measure success and productivity and all of those things. So one of the things I really noticed being different was making the choice to be intentional. I made a really conscious effort to align myself more with the cycles of nature. Like I remember having this conversation with you January last year. I don't want to set goals. I am not feeling all of this pull. Like I'm wintering. Everything in nature is asleep. I want to be asleep. I want to just sleep and eat cheese and just sleep some more.
Yeah.
So I think there was something in working out how I showed up in my day today and whether that was helpful for me or not. Right back to awareness. awareness is that beautiful choice point. Once I noticed that I was still just doing things automatically because that's the way they'd always been done, I had this beautiful opportunity to go, does that still work for me? Or not? And if not, I'm able to do something about that. How empowering is that when we stop and notice we've got choices? It doesn't have to be that way. So I think I've got loads of fizzing, popping, all connections to various bits that we've talked about today. Like there's so much I could say in different ways, but I feel like if you want me to define a before and after, really is that intentionality of understanding how I show up and the impact that has for me, for those around me, for the work I do.
Yeah. Because I always think there's courage in so many things that we don't recognize. And we talk a lot about, we're talking about ordinary, everyday courage. Yes, the big stuff. Yes, the stuff that we can all recognize as courage, but also the ordinary, everyday stuff that is courageous, but we don't necessarily recognize it's courageous. And so that idea of intentionality, of recognizing that there's a choice, and you can choose. All of that requires us to be courageous, because sometimes it's easier. In fact, nearly always, it's easier to stay stuck in our patterns, stay stuck in the way that we've always done things because we know it and it's comfortable and, well, it's worked in the past. And so just sometimes I think that ability to be able to pause and say, is this still working for me? What's this pattern? What's this story that I'm telling myself? And is that story true, or potentially other endings to that story? And which one of those endings do I want to choose? Because I have a choice. Right.
And I think within that, so it can be really easy to misinterpret that we have choices, we can make choices. Sometimes our choices are constrained by circumstances, and that's where courage becomes even more important, right? Because that's when those are leaving full-time employment. I'd thought about that for years, but never done anything about it because I was worried about where the money would come from. I was worried if I could do it. I was worried if anybody would book me, like all of that. I've got a mortgage to pay. They're a bit, I can't risk our home. So many different things within that. But there are always glimmers. There are always chinks of light where the choices exist. And that thing of not needing it to be perfect, not needing to see the whole staircase. That's not how we climb it. First next step. Then the next step, then the next step. This is maybe self-indulgent, and I almost feel like a bit of a div asking it, but when you made that statement about I was already courageous, or you already saw courage in me, lovely to hear, but also a little bit like, I was talking to Amy this morning about how hard it is sometimes to just accept the nice things that other people say. But I guess I'm really curious, how do you evidence that? Like what do those words mean in actual practical tangible terms?
So it's a fabulous question. Listeners, this is why I love my conversations with Donna, because I don't get to ask all of the questions and just listen. She asks me questions too that make me think, which is appreciated and wonderful. So yeah, it's a really good question. So importantly, it looks different in different people. So, but from our perspective, and certainly, the first time that we met and the times that we've connected since then, I think the first and most important thing that I see that I make the link to courage is how curious a person's prepared to be, because curiosity is about being a learner, not a knower. And so you are, and people listening will have heard this in your introduction. You are endlessly curious, right? And you have a quiet confidence that it's okay to not know, right? And I think I was very attracted to that because I am a knower, right? I was like, oh my goodness, this is, I want to be a bit more like that. I don't want to be completely like that because that's terrible, but I want to be a bit more like that. So first of all, there's a curiosity. You are a learner, not a knower, 100%. And I think the other thing as well for me around courage is how open people are prepared to be it early on in a relationship, right? How much of yourself you give. And one of the things that we talk about in the program is this idea of, trust and vulnerability. And one of the things that a myth that people have is that before I can be vulnerable with someone, I must trust them. And that's just not the case, because actually trust needs vulnerability, vulnerability needs trust. I love Charles Feltman calls them the lock and the key. They serve no purpose. They don't work without each other, right?
Beautiful.
So the other thing that I really notice is that you trust by giving a little bit of vulnerability and a little bit more trust and a little bit more vulnerability and a little bit more trust. So
I think that's how we connected instantly, right? I think every conversation we have, that happens all the way through.
Yeah. Little bit more vulnerability, a little bit more trust, a little bit. And gradually that grows and grows and grows and the relationship deepens, right? The connection deepens. But the really important thing with vulnerability is that someone has to go first. And you have a willingness to go first. And that's courageous to me, right? That's courageous to me.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. Like, I've always just kind of gone, somebody's got to, might as well be me. Like,
totally.
Nobody else is feeling it. I'm just going to do it. Let me take that discomfort away for you and just throw you in at the deep end.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And I think the other thing that's super important, which I'll share, because again, it's part of the work that we do, is that when we choose to be courageous, right, we step into the arena, we step into that courage. And of course, as soon as you decide to be courageous, along comes vulnerability, right? Oh, hello. You thought I wasn't coming this time, but here I am. And of course, in that arena moment, the really important, there's lots of critics and lots of noise, but the really important areas of the arena to hear and to see is the support section, right? And so you are in your own support section when we talk about self-compassion, but there's also people who are in your support section. And you are nearly always in my support section.
Same.
Right? You're either literally there, like...
There's a seat with a plaque on with your name on it, right? It's that. Yes.
Go, Donna. Yeah, 100%, right? And sometimes you're actually there, and sometimes I'm imagining you're there, right?
I'm always there.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what's super important about the person in your support section, or the people that you choose to be in your support section in those moments, is that it's not about... the people that kind of tell you what you want to hear, or get the kind of like, oh dear, yeah, oh poor you, that was just terrible. I know, I don't know how you survived it. That's not what you need in your support section. What you need in your support section, and what I get from you, is, blimey, that was tough. I can see how hard that was for you. What do you need? What can I do? What do you need from me right now? And then at some point, at an appropriate point, right, let me get you back up, dust you off, and then I'm going to put you back in there again, right? But I'm still here in the support section. I'm absolutely fine. But back you go. Try again, right?
Yes.
Have another go.
Always.
And that's the people in your support section, the people who always have your back and whose opinions and constructive criticism matter to you. Right.
And they'll be honest with you, right? None of that, they're your ace when something you've done really wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, I think I really value that ability to confront, to challenge, to say as is. Right. Like, even if that's only your perspective, that's really valuable data. I appreciate we each have our own worldview and perspective. They don't always align, the willingness to share it, the willingness to bring that into my thinking and consideration is so, so important. In fact, I'd say that's a non-negotiable for the support section. I don't need you to blow smoke up my ass. I don't need you to rub my shoulders and tell me everything will be okay. What I need is somebody that shows up as their whole selves and values me enough to tell me what they're really thinking.
Yeah, 100%. Again, I can't help but quote Brene, right? Clear is kind.
Yes, every time.
Totally. And that's what we need in our support section when we show up to be courageous. 100%. 100%. Okay, now I'm watching the time because
I've just looked at the time and thought, we're getting carried away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't said this to everybody, but there has to be a part 2, maybe a part 3. Maybe we'll do a whole season. No, I'm don't worry, don't panic. It's not going to become the Donna and Melissa show. But there's so much, right, that we could be sharing and talking about. And I think because of our shared passions, but also our different perspectives, our different viewpoints, and our willingness to challenge each other, makes for really, really interesting conversations. But I always like to end, Donna, with thinking about, I'm hoping that right now out there in the ether are coaches listening to this conversation, right? And I'd really love for you to share what the one thing is that you think that all coaches should know about courage.
I think the one thing that all humans should know about courage is that it's in there. You are, what's the Winnie the Pooh A.A. Milne quote? You're stronger than you think and braver than you believe and more capable than you realise. Think about your life to date. Think about those moments when your back has been against the wall. You're still standing. You came through it, however hard it was, however difficult, however much there is to process and recover from or work through from, you are still standing.
Yeah.
You have courage. Yeah. And if you can recognise that, if you can bring your awareness to it, you open up that beautiful choice point where you can actively cultivate it.
Yeah. Lovely. I love that, right? Because courage isn't something you either have or don't have. It's not inherent. It's not some noble quality. It's absolutely something that if you, as you say, if you can bring your critical awareness to it, it's something that you can develop, build on, make stronger. And it was something that you shared earlier on when you're talking about choice points. And I think that it's a lovely metaphor, this idea that, that it's almost like there are gaps that the light comes through, and those are your choice points. I think that was the sort of metaphor you used, and I think that developing your courage opens up those shafts of light, and creates an opportunity for you to be able to maybe begin with peer through and have a look, and then get braver and go a little bit further in. But it opens up those choice points, as you say, right? Those shafts of light, and an opportunity for us to make a choice, and hopefully a courageous choice, right?
Definitely.
Lovely.
Definitely.
Well, Donna, I love all of our conversations.
I don't want it to be over.
I know. I'm like, it's as rich and interesting and inspiring as all of our conversations that we've had. But I really appreciate you I appreciate you. I
appreciate you too. Mutual Admiration Society.
Absolutely. But for coming on the show, giving your time, as always, sharing yourself with me and with the audience that are listening, right? But thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for asking me. It's a real privilege.
Thank you for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can visit my website, melissahaig.com, to find out more about the work I do to help coaches like you be more courageous with their clients, their business, and their lives.